Good morning, ladies and gentlemen in the media. Welcome to the post-cabinet brief for Thursday, August 11th, 2016. This morning, the brief will be done by the Honorable Minister of State, Joseph Harmon. We also have with us today the Minister of Natural Resources, Honorable Raphael Trotman. Mr. Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Archer. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Welcome to our post-cabinet press briefing for a cabinet meeting that was held last Tuesday, the 9th of August, 2016. Cabinet was briefed on a number of issues on Tuesday. And of course, you know, it came shortly after the marathon session which we had in the National Assembly that came to an end at about 3:30 on Tuesday morning. So there were some sleepy eyes. But nonetheless, the brains were all engaged in the conduct of the business of the nation. Cabinet was briefed on the recommendations of a Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly for the appointment of 5 candidates to be appointed to the Public Procurement Commission. Those persons are Mrs. Emily Dotson, Mrs. Carol Corbin, Mr. Sokrishnal Pasha, Mr. Ivor English, and Dr. Nanda K. Gopal. These names were extracted from a list of 29 nominees and were arrived at by a unanimous decision of the Public Accounts Committee at its 17th meeting on July 20, 2016. Cabinet noted with satisfaction that the Commission received the unanimous consent of the House when the matter came up on Monday evening. Its functions include to make regulations governing procurement, to determine documents for public procurement, such as bidding, pre-qualification, evaluation, and contract forms, to review decisions of procuring entities and adjudicating debarment proceedings. It may also be recalled that Cabinet on June the 15th, 2016, considered and approved the establishment of a bid protest committee in accordance with Article 12(1) and 2 of the Public Procurement Regulations. This committee will complement the work of the Commission to further government's commitment to transparency in the public procurement process. The Bid Protest Committee will adjudicate over complaints filed by aggrieved contractors for a fee of $50,000 plus 1% of the bid sum in question. There was some concern about when the first cabinet decision was made about the contract sum, and therefore that led to some amount of hold-up in the work of the Bid Protest Committee. But it is now clear, it's now clarified that we're talking about 1% of the bid sum. So that should clarify and clear the way for any bids, any protests that are before the committee to get that done. Cabinet approved the request of the Honorable Minister of Finance for the Government of Guyana to sign Reciprocal Model A1 intergovernmental agreement with the United States of America Internal Revenue Service. This agreement will allow financial institutions in Guyana to identify and disclose details regarding the holders of United States dollars accounts. Cabinet noted that since 2014, Guyana was regarded as having an intergovernmental agreement. As a consequence, local financial institutions were required to submit reports for 2014, but were unable to do so because the agreement was not in place. So therefore, reports for 2014 and 2015 are now due and to be submitted by September 30th, 2016. The signing of this IGA will also allow the conclusion of the service agreement with the software provider for the installation of reporting software related to the Foreign Accounts Tax Compliance Act, also known as FATCA, thus bolstering Guyana's anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism trust. Cabinet received a report from the Honorable Minister of Public Health on the state of affairs at the Public Hospital Corporation, Georgetown. Among the issues raised in the report were the relationship between the subject minister and the board of directors of the corporation, the decision of the board of directors to reinstate the chief executive officer of the hospital, who had been previously sent on administrative leave to facilitate a forensic audit of the institution. Cabinet, having deliberated on the matter, appointed the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs as a mediator to inquire into all issues raised in the report and to make recommendations to Cabinet for its resolution within 1 week. The Honorable Minister of Public Health also reported on the establishment of an off-site medical storage facility for his ministry and the Guyana Public Hospital Corporation. Cabinet, having listened very carefully to the representations made, agreed to appoint a subcommittee headed by the Honorable Member, Mr. Minister Raphael Trotman, who will chair that subcommittee, and to report to Cabinet within 48 hours of its findings and recommendations. Hence the presence of Minister Trotman here today, who will give you a more expansive report on the findings of the subcommittee. Cabinet consented to the request by the Honorable Minister of Social Protection to convene a high-level policy dialogue to address programming for adolescents and youths. This dialogue is to be organized by the co-conveners of the World Population Day 2016 Symposium, the Ministry of Social Protection and Social Cohesion in conjunction with the United Nations Population Fund. The dialogue will include Her Excellency the First Lady of Guyana, Mrs. Sandra Granger, and the Honorable Ministers and Chief Technical Officers of relevant ministries. It will seek to establish a multi-sectoral commission to address programming for adolescents and youth toward the goal of realizing their full potential. Cabinet approved the attendance of the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs at a meeting of the Executive Council of the Council of Legal Education to be held at St. John's, Antigua from September 1 to 4. The Attorneys General of CARICOM, member states comprise the Executive Committee of the Council. The meeting will address issues relating to legal education in the CARICOM region. Cabinet continued to give its objection to contracts as follows: for the supply of equipment for the Ministry of Public Infrastructure, the purchase and supply of 2 20-ton dump trucks in the sum of $55,400,000, a contract awarded to Eldorado Trading. For Lot 2, for the supply of 1 motor grader for the sum of $25,404,000, contract awarded to General Equipment Guyana Limited, GenEquip. For the rehabilitation of Branch Road, Maikoni, Region Number 5, the sum of $27,957,150, a contract awarded to Yunus Civil and Building Construction Services. For the technical upgrade of the procurement platform of the National Procurement and Tender Administration Board, for the sum of $99,875, a contract awarded to Mr. Patrick Farnham. For the manual maintenance of 65,480 rods of drainage and irrigation channels within lots 52 to 74 of the water users area in region number 6. The sum of $17,697,600. The contract was awarded to the Water Users Association of lot 52 to 74. For the procurement of dietary supplies for the Timeri prison in several lots. Lot 1, the supply of dry ration. Contracts were awarded to Nigel's Supermarket, Paradise Food Products, Esmeralda Contracting Services, Guyana's Green Grocery, Dabi Variety. The contracts amounting to the sum of $20,439,228. And for the second lot, for the supply of fresh ration, contracts were awarded to Nigel's Supermarket, Paradise Food Products, and Guyana's Green Grocery. Contracts in the sum of $9,814,500. Members of the media would recognize that with the passage of the Public Procurement Commission and its eventual assent into law by His Excellency the President, that the role of Cabinet in relation to these contracts will be significantly modified, but I will keep you abreast with respect to those modifications when they happen. Thank you very much, and I'd like to ask the Honorable Minister Raphael Trotman to address you on the issue of the investigation that he led based on a decision of the Cabinet.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Minister of State. As has been stated, I was tasked to sit on a subcommittee that comprised Prime Minister, Mr. Moses Nagamutu, and Minister of State, Mr. Joseph Harmon, and within 48 hours to do a report. So I did make the deadline, contrary to some opinions in some quarters that I missed the deadline. So Cabinet started at 1 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon, so I'm within the deadline. The report is to be submitted firstly to His Excellency. This is a copy. Minister of State has a copy. So I wouldn't go into details, but I would wish to perhaps go to some recommendations which have been made coming out of the report. And I think members of the press may find them useful. One recommendation, there are 7 that I have set out here, is that there was money which is owed to the new GPC. The Cabinet Subcommittee discovered from the Permanent Secretary that though the check had been prepared, it had not been paid over. We've asked that immediate payment be made. Secondly, we are recommending that the contract be reviewed. Cabinet may choose the Honorable Attorney General to do a review of the contract for the lease of the bond in Sussex Street. Thirdly, we are recommending a greater role for the Minister of Public Infrastructure where buildings are leased, bought, or constructed for on behalf of the Government of Guyana. We are recommending that in view of the statements made by the Honourable Minister of Public Health and based on his explanations, which we have accepted, that he gives an perhaps apology, a public apology, and to explain that his statements were in the context of the advice that he had received. And we are advising that the press be given all relevant documents which are appendices to the report, including correspondence between Government of Guyana, New GPC Inc., copies of the lease, and photographs which we have, and of course that you will be allowed to tour the facility. We did tour the facility and found that it was and is capable, quite capable, of being a place to store pharmaceuticals and drugs, because it does meet the WHO requirements, and in terms of temperatures, cold storage, security, and so forth. But as I said, the report is about to be submitted to His Excellency, and I have no doubt that Cabinet will order that it be shared in its entirety. But the report is completed, and as I said, members of the committee did meet with both Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Public Health and the Minister, and were satisfied with the answers given to questions put, and understood better the context in which Minister of Health made his comments. That notwithstanding, it is obvious that the statements made by him, some of them, not all, one in particular being that there were drugs stored in the building. That is obviously not so, because I was able to ascertain that when I visited. However, it was discovered that the building had in fact been prepared and was about to receive a shipment of its first shipment of drugs when the proposal was made for central air conditioning. There are about, I would say, 10 or more air conditioning units in place already, but for the purposes of redundancy, to ensure that we had a backup, a request had been made for central air conditioning in addition to individual units. And so a decision was taken not to make the delivery to the bond, but to hold back to allow the air conditioning central running of pipes and so forth to be made. So in that sense, there's obviously nothing stored there right now, but from all that I was able to see and members of the committee were able to observe, the building does have all the necessary facilities as would be expected of a facility of that nature. And as I said, it has a walk-in cold storage area, it has a secure area, it has a delivery area, it has backup generation, which kicks in within 10 seconds of a blackout. It has 24-hour security, both physical and electronic. It has washroom facilities. It has an electronic forklift system, because the guidelines prescribe that you shouldn't have fumes from a diesel or gas, petrol operated machine within such an environment. And neither should you have fuel or oil or lubricants contaminating the environment. So it does in fact have all of the necessary facilities one would expect for a bond to store drugs and pharmaceuticals. So the report is in, and I think I have said enough on the matter, and I will ensure that His Excellency has a copy of the report as well this morning. Electronic versions have been sent, but being an old-fashioned person, I want to make sure that a written hard copy is also presented to His Excellency. Thank you. Could I hand you over to Minister Harmon again, please? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I know that fulsome report by the Honorable Minister Trotman would have satisfied, I'm sure, the queries which you might have had when you came into this room. But nonetheless, I now invite your questions, both on the report by Minister Trotman and on the statement I made about the other matters which engaged Cabinet's attention last Tuesday.
Minister Trotman, Dennis Chabal, Airways. Sir, in relation to the report, could you say how can government justify having a bond located near to an often a cloud canal and in a generally poor environment, which is susceptible to flooding and other types of pollution?
Well, those, as I said, I toured, the building is sufficiently insulated from some of the concerns that you've raised. I satisfied myself of that yesterday. What impressed me is its proximity to the ports of Georgetown. So what might be seen as a disadvantage is actually quite an advantage. It is near to the Georgetown ports, and therefore when stocks arrive, they can easily be taken there and accessed without having to come along the East Bank corridor or elsewhere. So I have nothing to show, and I did ask the question, has this building ever been flooded before? There are no signs. Normally you look for watermarks to see whether a flood had affected the area or not, and there are no signs of any such thing at
Well,
all.
what's your contingency plan should that occur?
Pardon?
What's the contingency plan should that occur?
There is the facility at Diamond, which could temporarily house any drugs should there be any threat of flooding.
Marcel Thomas, Starbuck News. Minister Trotman, for you also. The concern over the procurement of the building, that is the soliciting of the contract. This contract was signed in March. The building was bought in March, sorry, an advance of 25 million, which is the same the Ministry of Health would have given to Mr. Lawrence Singh, was paid for the building. Were questions posed to the Minister of Health as to, one, how did Mr. Lawrence Singh, who has never been in the business of storing drugs before, knew that government had an emergency to store drugs as claimed? And two, the monies, the 25 million, how did they come up with that figure as a startup?
Well, what I can say is that the Minister of Public Health is not in the business of procuring buildings. He was asked by Cabinet in July to find the building, and we were in fact informed by him in July that there's a possibility of this building. So I see it as nothing more than a coincidence that the price paid and the price of the security deposit and the first month's rental are the same, because there's no way that government could have paid for the building in March because Cabinet did not approve a payment until July. So that's the first thing I'd like to say. Secondly, after Cabinet informed the Minister of Health to find the building, it would be the task of his officials within the ministry. It's not for him to go about questioning landlords and potential owners. That is not the preserve or the remit of ministers.
And that brings me to my follow-up question, sir. Why wasn't there a public notice?
Well, I can tell you that's quite understandable. Given the mood of Cabinet, when this matter was considered at the beginning of July was that we needed to find immediate space because invoices totaling $137,000 US, I believe, were received from the documents I have from the new GPC, asking that they now be paid a rental, half by the Ministry of Health and the other half by the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation. Cabinet felt that in the circumstances of new GPC being a supplier and now a competitor and open bidding process, because we're doing away with the sourcing to new GPC, that it would not be fair for other competitors to compete in a process where new GPC was also conveniently providing warehouse space to the government. And so, one, we felt that the immediate demand for payment of $137,000 US seemed a bit beyond coincidental once we announced that there would be a change in the bidding process. And secondly, that it would be highly unfair to other persons in the business to know that government continued in a relationship with one of the competitors. So with that in mind, Minister of Health was told to make this a priority. And I don't believe that he left Cabinet with a feeling that this was a casual matter that could wend its way over several months, that time was of the essence and it should be taken care of immediately.
But how did Mr. Singh know that the bond was needed?
You'd have to ask Mr. Singh that. Obviously someone would have approached him. I'm not sure the process, but at the end of the day, the facility is quite capable of being a storage area from what I was able to see.
Quick follow-up. Is Cabinet at all concerned about the image this gives in terms of drug and drug procurement and services, given that the past administration was accused of sole sourcing, and now here we go again with the sole sourcing of this building?
Well, I don't think you can confuse the sourcing of drugs and essential products for several 100,000 people with the procurement of one building. The two are not comparable, quite frankly, if I may put it that way. Given the circumstances that Minister of Health was told to, yes, enter into a contract as quickly as possible, because we had been told we now have to pay rental for a facility that was hitherto before free, and because, as I said, it would not be comfortable for government to be in a relationship renting from one of its suppliers. We believe that sole sourcing was the best way forward. However, in Cabinet, the discussion went along the way of government having its own facility. And that's one of the recommendations that the subcommittee has made, that government needs to have an additional facility indeed to Diamond. We need to diversify so that each region has its own facility. And thirdly, that we need a second facility in Demerara. So I have no doubt that the contract at its end will see government by that time having its own newly constructed facility. I should say as well that the original contract that was presented to Cabinet was for, I believe, 10 years, and Cabinet said no. Cabinet brought it down to 3 years with the belief, as I said, that we must move towards our own facility, but given the exigencies of the situation, we thought that we needed to find a building very quickly.
Gordon Mosley, News Source. Minister Trotman, one, could you say if it was explained to the Cabinet who may be the other principals of this Linden Holding Company? And could you say who they might be?
No, I wouldn't be able to say.
And sir, could you also say if this Larry Singh is the same Larry Singh that would be, who's the arms dealer that would seek contracts for the provision of licensed weapons to the government? And could you also say whether or not the Cabinet this week turned down a contract that he was seeking for the provision of arms for the security sector?
You seem to be better advised than I am. Let me start with the last question. Cabinet did not turn down a memorandum in the name of Larry Singh. One did come up, and some more information has been sought, but it was not turned down or refused. Let me put it that way. Secondly, prior to coming into office, I believe Mr. Singh, for what I've been able to find out, along with a number of persons, have been licensed or permitted by government and not by the previous administration to be licensed traders in weapons and ammunition. There are a number of them, as far as I know, that are licensed. Some have shop fronts, some don't. And it was discovered that Mr. Singh's enterprise had been supplying weapons, yes, and material to the Ghana Defense Force. The Ghana Defense Force has indicated to the Defense Board that because of the sensitivity of what was to be acquired, they preferred sole sourcing for such matters because we don't want to know what is being purchased, and you don't put things like that out into open bidding. And so government continued with that relationship, but of course, like every relationship, it is under review. Thirdly, in terms of who the principals are, that was not my mandate, but as I said, after Tuesday, and if the Minister of Legal Affairs and Attorney General or any other minister or any other process ensues to review the contract, which has been recommended, I'm sure that those questions will be forthcoming. But it wouldn't take much, in fact, to get into the deeds registry to look at the documents of Linden Holdings and find out who the principals are. But I didn't have that mandate and certainly didn't have the time yesterday to cover that.
With regards to the additional information being sought with the weapons contract or the memorandum, could you say if that information you're seeking now has to do with whether or not he is able or his company is able to still trade weapons from the US and from the UK whether or not he has license still to do.
Well,
those.
that would be a
Okay.
matter
Yeah,
for the
maybe,
Ministry of Public Security. It is as well a matter of public security, which we wouldn't get into, but I have no indication that is not so.
What I can add to that is that at the level of the National Security Committee, a decision was made that there be, under the chairmanship of the minister responsible for public security, a procurement committee headed by the Minister of Public Security that would look at the procurement of arms for the discipline services. All of this, so that it will, any further purchases of arms and ammunition will be certified by that body under the chairmanship of the Minister of Public Security. So it is also in this context that Cabinet asked that the matter be deferred so that that committee chaired by Vice President Ramjatan can have a look at the specification and all of these other issues, and for them to make a pronouncement. Whether in fact at the end of it, they say, okay, this is the best we can have and so on, then it will probably come back to Cabinet. But it is deferred for the purpose of that checking with the Minister of Public Security.
Ronald, Ghana Daily News. Mr. Harmon, are you aware that it is alleged that friends and associates of Director of the Food and Drug, Mr. Marlon Cole, has been importing the formulated version of Zerodol and Zerodol P. This drug is being formulated by ICPA in India for sale only in India. However, they sent letters to the Ministry of Health and the Food and Drug Department desisting from the importation of this drug. Also, it is alleged that Mr. Cole is on the payroll of importers and is also refusing other importers of similar product into Guyana. Several persons have complained to the Guyana Daily News that their product was denied entry into Guyana because of simple addresses that are not correct on the labels. Guyana Daily News has contacted Mr. Cole on this issue. However, his words were, I can do whatever I want. We would like to know, why is Mr. Cole refusing entry of these drugs into the country, similar drugs, and is it a political move by him? And secondly, on the topic of the styrofoam, it is also...
So let me take it one at a time. First, because I know recognizing you, in fact, it's the first time here, but it's Guyana Daily News.
Yes.
It is a new outfit?
Yes.
Okay, well, welcome to the post-cabinet press briefing. That's one. Secondly, these are very serious allegations that are made against a public official. And you know our policy is that when serious allegations are made against public officials, we have to have them investigated. So what I would ask is that these allegations that have been made, that they be either sent to the Minister of Public Health, who will pass them on to the Ministry of the Presidency. Once they warrant an investigation. From what you are saying, it seems to me that there's some amount of investigation necessary. And as you know, in the case of the Barry Dataram, he had made some allegations against persons in like Kanu and so on, and we did an inquiry into it. If there is strength in what you're saying, I trust that the persons who have made these allegations will be strong enough to come and stand up to an inquiry and said, I said so. So the important thing is that we cannot act on speculation and allegations. There must be somebody who can come up and say, yes, I am saying so, and this is my allegation against the Director of Food and Drug, and let us investigate it. So that is what I would say where things relate to Mr. Marlon Cole are concerned. So let's get the allegations put forward in a certain way. Certainly it's not discussed at Cabinet, and certainly I'm not in a position really to pronounce on what you're saying, but as a general principle, What I'm saying is that once allegations are made against officers of the state, that an investigation is done, either to clear the name of the officer or, if necessary, to deal what has to be done. But certainly we cannot just go around leveling these allegations unless we can prove them. So I'm encouraging you to have those allegations made known to the Ministry of Health in the first instance, to allow them the facility of taking action if indeed that is so. And secondly, if they persist and if they have a widespread nature that affects the entire business community, then it's something that is serious enough for the government to calls for an inquiry.
Secondly, Mr. Trotman, with regards to styrofoam, again, it is also alleged that the styrofoam is being smuggled. GRA has placed a ban on importation of this product into the country. However, it is alleged that this product is being smuggled from Suriname into Ghana. Would your ministry be stepping up the pace to see non-usage of this product? Because you go to every restaurant and even some government functions, you see the product is being used. What is your take?
Thank you. Well, I don't know that there's ever been a restriction or a ban placed on any product or item that has not been thereafter smuggled. So indeed, we have noticed incidents. Many reports have come that out of Berbice, both the EPA and GRA have been notified and are actively pursuing plans to curb the incidents of the smuggling. But we have received reports and it is being addressed. I should add that as of 1st of August, I no longer hold responsibility for the EPA. It comes now on the Ministry of the Presidency and Minister of State. So please, in the next press conference, direct the question to him as to what has been the follow-up. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions on the post-cabinet brief?
Yes.
Outside.
No, we're sticking to the brief.
Yes.
No questions outside.
No.
Thank you.
Minister Harmon, I wanted to know if you are aware, if Cabinet is aware of how soon the President is going to approve the PPC members and the establishment of that body.
Well, I can say this to you, that once the bills have received the full attention of the National Assembly, that they are certified by the clerk of the National Assembly, that they are sent to His Excellency for his signature consenting to it, that the period of time between the bills coming from the National Assembly to the time that they're being assented to has never exceeded, since we came into office, 1 week. So we can use that as a guideline.
Then what happens now if the President approves the PPC? What happens with the bid protest committee? Because that is no longer
No, it is there. It is there.
it would no longer be relevant with the commissioning of the PPC.
It is there. It is part of the regulations. That is why I quoted
In the absence of,
the regulations 2 and regulations subsection 1 and 2. That there is, under the regulations that are made pursuant to the Public Procurement Act, the establishment of a bid protest committee. There are some persons who, you may have small contractors who have had an issue and might not want to engage an entire commission in that way. You know, so like these are persons that bid protest committee can deal with matters that don't need to engage the entire commission. So it's not that one is there at the exclusion of the other. Both of them can work in the same way. Both of them.
Mr. Trotman, one final question. With regards to your report, the property in question, that property was inherited by a guy named Dennis. Dennis sold that property for $30 million to the current owners of that property.
Giving evidence, because you seem to have a lot of information. information. Would you take an oath and swear to some of what you're saying? Like I said, my report was a cabinet subcommittee's report.
Is there
On,
a question?
on
there?
Tuesday,
Yeah.
we'll ask,
Okay, can your report justify that 3,000 square foot for $12.5 million per month? That is the property, both flats rented, or is just the bottom flat?
it's both flats. I've asked, the committee has asked that we review some of the terms, including the cost. But as was explained, the mass storing of drugs and pharmaceuticals within recent times cost the government $200+ million by drugs just being stockpiled in bulk and expiring. We can't afford that. So under the new system, supplies will be required to have a schedule of delivery. And that's why the need for this massive storage area that people envisage is no longer there. And as it is decentralized and diffused over the regions, there's no need any longer. So drugs will be coming in, if I can just use the term fresh drugs, in the sense that they wouldn't be close to expiration or threatened by expiration. In terms of the cost, we know it is far less than what was being asked to be paid by new GPC. And at the same time, we've calculated in cabinet that for that cost, the savings that we would receive from not having to pay new GPC, the idea is to build a new facility. Because yes, it's expensive. I'm not going to get into too expensive or very expensive. It is expensive, but at the same time, we've got to secure the health of Guyanese people, children in particular. Vaccines have to be kept at a certain temperature so that they are, capable of being used when needed. And government has worked out that we cannot afford this cost for the long term. And by the savings between, I believe, 19 and 12 million vis-a-vis new GPC and this facility, we could and will be building our own facility in the very near future. But it is both stories. It's very large, and in due course, you members of the media will be invited, and I hope that before the week is out to tour the facility.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.